Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today again in our series of interviews. My name is Martina Pospíšilová and I work as a culture officer at the Embassy of the State of Israel. It is my pleasure to welcome you today at the interview about a very fascinating book called What a Plant Knows, which was recently published in the Czech language by Academia Publishing House. The guest of today's interview will be the author of the book himself, president of Ben Gurion University of the Negev, Professor Daniel Chamovitz, and the host will be the translator of the book, Professor Viktor Žárský from the Charles University, Faculty of Science and the Institute of Experimental Botany of the Czech Academia of Sciences. Thank you both very much for joining our Zoom. And now, please, Professor Žárský, the floor is yours.
Thank you. With great joy, I like to introduce to you Professor Daniel Chamovitz. Daniel Chamovitz grew up in Aliquippa, Pennsylvania, and studied at both Columbia University and the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where he received his PhD in genetics in the lab of Joseph Hirschberg. He was the first one to clone a gene involved in the biosynthesis of beta-carotene. And in fact, this type of enzyme was later used for golden rice production, GM rice with a high content of carotenes. From 1993 to 96, he carried out postdoctoral research at Yale University in the lab of Professor Denk, where he discovered the COP9 signalosome protein complex that was proposed then to be one of master regulators of plant development. Here I dare a small personal remark, directly inspired by Daniel Chamovitz's methodological approach to plant protein complex isolation from market purchased cauliflower. We isolated plant exocyst complex here in Prague. Thereafter, Daniel Chamovitz accepted a faculty position at the Tel Aviv University, where he served as chair of the Department of Plant Sciences and dean of the George S. Weiss Faculty of Life Sciences. His lab in Tel Aviv has been spearheading further study of signalosome complex and was the first to show that COP9 signalosome is also essential for development of animals and likely involved in a number of human diseases, including cancer. In 2002, Professor Chamovitz was a visiting scientist at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, and since 2016 was a visiting professor in the School of Advanced Agricultural Sciences at Beijing University. Last year, on January 1st, he became president of Ben Gurion University of the Negev. Most important for this online meeting, in 2012, Daniel Chamovitz published a book for general public, What a Plant Knows, a systematic comparative biology of human versus plant senses. It is translated in at least 19 languages. Book was voted top 10 in Amazon and is often related to in discussions on plant senses and intelligence. A second edition of this book was published in 2017, and here we are today to introduce translation of this book into the Czech, Co rostlina ví, just published in Academia Publishing House here in Prague. I will show you the book once more so that you can remember. So most welcome, Professor Daniel Chamovitz. And here is my first question. What was your personal journey to become interested and study plants? Was it an early interest from childhood or later post-teenage awakening? Children and young people are generally more attracted to animals, and Aliquippa, close to Pittsburgh, does not look like a very green town.
First of all, Victor, thanks for hosting me, and I'm so glad to have you interviewing me. It's not often that I have someone interviewing me who knows more about plant physiology than I do. And so I'm a little worried about where we're going to go here with these questions. Please, nothing too difficult. And it's also nice to be interviewed by someone who I've known for such a long time. So again, thank you for your interest in the book. Thank you for translating it. No, I really did not have any interest in plants as a kid. I didn't have any interest. I never actually gave plants another thought, to be completely honest, until I was 18. And I can actually remember the moment when I was 18. I had taken a year off of college, and I was working on a kibbutz, a communal farm in the south of Israel, in the desert, where I was a tractor driver in the alfalfa fields. I don't know if you've ever driven a tractor, but it's a really boring thing. You put the tractor in gear and you go straight, and then after about 10 minutes, you turn it around and go straight the other way. And it gives you a lot of time to think.
Yes.
As I was going through the alfalfa fields, I noticed that when you cut down alfalfa, it grows back. But when you cut wheat, it doesn't. And I really knew nothing about agriculture, nothing about plant biology, but I had a eureka moment. And, you know, in science, these are the moments we live for. And this was actually my first scientific eureka moment. And I said, you know, if we could understand why alfalfa grows back and wheat doesn't, maybe this would be important for feeding the world, which would be at least as important as me being a physician, which I thought I was going to be before then. And it was at that day that I decided I was going to study plant biology. I thought I would be studying agriculture. And that led me to change to study agriculture, which got me more involved in basic science, and the rest is history.
Yes, and then you really made a wonderful star science career still you are doing. And then suddenly you decided to sacrifice part of your time in the lab and lecture rooms, and you wrote a book on plants for general public.
Well, I don't think the word sacrifice is really the right word. You know, all of us, and I really do believe that, all of us in higher education do it for a number of reasons. We all want to make amazing discoveries, but we also all enjoy our interaction with our students. And we all, I think, see it as a calling to educate the next generation. At least I'm sure that you agree with all those three things.
Certainly.
And I was frustrated that I would be teaching. So plant biology for year after year after year was kept, the biology faculty kept trying to take it out of the curriculum as not being relevant for modern biology. What do we need to study plants for? We want to study cancer. We want to study, you know, something that's important. We don't need to all this botany. And you probably heard similar things also.
Yes.
But when the students took my class, I could still see their eyes opening when I would say, you know what, plants can differentiate between blue and red. And they would say, what? That's impossible. And it got me actually I would get frustrated, not only of the ignorance of the whole community, even my colleagues didn't know that. But at the same time, the students and my colleagues were convinced that plants have like classical music, which we'll maybe get to later, but they don't. There's no evidence whatsoever. But then I realized that the problem isn't the public. The problem is us, that we've done a really bad job of showing both the complexity and beauty of plant biology and its importance for the world. And we'd sort of like left the field open to pseudoscientists.
Yes.
And so I actually challenged myself, since no one's done it, would I be able to do it? So I just sort of looked at it as another academic challenge. Could I write a popular science book?
And you did.
Yeah, it was sort of an experiment. And the whole process itself was also an experiment. It never occurred to me that we would be talking today about translation number 19 into Czech.
And for many people reading your book, it certainly will be really surprising that you could compare all our human senses with analogous abilities in plants. However, the first edition of your book concluded on a possible absence of hearing in plants. However, second edition, which is now in Czech, is a witness of rapid science progress. And the discovery of plant hearing is certainly among the most surprising in recent years. And moreover, as readers will see, you and colleagues from Tel Aviv University contributed also experimentally to the understanding of plant acoustic sensitivity and its biological significance. Can you say a few words about the hearing in plants, what
Sure.
you and colleagues did, and if there is some continuation, either in Tel Aviv or Be'er-Sheva?
So I had several goals for the book in general. One was, of course, to expose the world to plant biology in a popular sense, but also to teach about the process of science. Our societies are sometimes so scientifically illiterate. I mean, COVID has really exposed it,
Yes.
especially in the United States.
It's,
you know,
unbelievable.
Unbelievable. But it also, to a certain, so I wanted to use the book also as a vehicle to talk about the scientific method. And so there was a book that had been published in the early 1970s called The Secret Life of Plants, which was a very popular, incredibly popular book. Millions of, much more popular than What a Plant Knows. And in this book, it was so popular that Stevie Wonder even wrote music for it. And in the book, they talk about plants withering under rock and roll and growing to classical music, to Mozart. And we know that that's based on there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that plants respond to music. But the world feels it, that it is because of one book. And so in the first edition of the book, I said, as opposed to plants respond to light, and plants responding to touch, and plants responding to smell, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that plants respond to any acoustic signal whatsoever. And I even came up with a hypothesis that the reason that they don't is that they don't need it, that plants don't run away. Maybe, tried to justify it.
Yes.
But I left open the possibility that maybe we haven't done the correct experiment. And the reason I said that even there was because a colleague of mine across the hallway from me, Lila Khadani, she's an evolutionary mathematical biologist. She had been reading different versions of the book for me, giving feedback. And she said, you can't say that categorically they don't hear. Maybe we haven't done the right experiment. And so then we spent a long time trying to figure out what would be the right experiment. And the right experiment would have to be an ecologically valid signal. I mean, classical music and rock and roll, how could that possibly affect plant evolution? But on the other hand, maybe there would be an advantage to a plant hearing a pollinator, either a moth or a bee, because we know that making nectar is energetically, takes a lot of energy for the plant. And so if they would only make nectar when a pollinator was around, that could be advantageous. But then the other problem is technologically, how do you actually hear that sound? How would we record that sound, and how would we be able to play it back to the flowers? And so it really was a collaboration of 4 groups. My group, basically I just gave the idea. And then these other 3 groups together with Yossi Yovel, who's a bat biologist and has all this incredible equipment for recording and playback of very high frequencies.
Yes.
And Yuval Sapir, who's a plant ecologist, runs our botanical garden, who said we should work with a plant called the evening primrose because it has a very big flower. And then we checked if we play back the sound of a pollinator versus the sound of a non-pollinator, is there a difference in the nectar? And the result was quite clear that yes, when it hears a pollinator, it makes nectar that has much more sugar than when there's no pollinator around. I could go more into it, but this really showed for the first time that plants respond to an ecologically valid signal. And we can actually do an artificial signal of that same wavelength that shows that the plant differentiates between the wavelengths. It's not that it's smelling the bug or anything.
Yes.
And so that's what we did in the second, I think the sentence I said is the difference between a pseudoscientist and a real scientist is a pseudoscientist won't let facts get in the way of what they know to be true.
Yes.
Whereas a scientist is always ready for their truth to be shot down.
Yes.
And then and the best thing that can happen for us is for our hypothesis then to be disproven. So then we need to make a new one.
Yes. Yes, and this was the situation there. And you ask, where is the ear implant? Do you have any hypothesis?
Well, maybe you were one of the reviewers of this article, because this article went through 3 years of reviewing until it was finally accepted. That's a good question. What would be the organ that's sensing the sound? Because there obviously are no ears in a plant. And again, through a collaborator with people who understand more about engineering, we could see that at that wavelength, the petals vibrate. Now, if you think about what is hearing, hearing is responding to a wavelength, and in our own ears, the hairs in our ears vibrate at a wavelength. And so then we plucked off the petals and they no longer responded, the flowers. But then of course you could say, well, you've just killed the flower. So, you always need more and more controls. And the final experiment we did was we isolated the petals with styrofoam so that they couldn't move. And when the petals were still attached, but couldn't move, the flowers no longer responded. So we think that the petals are vibrating. That causes some type of signal, which is going down to the nectary. We have no idea what the signal is. We have no idea how it responds, but the response is within several minutes.
Great. And this is really not published data, so I appreciate.
No, that was in the article. That last one.
That last one was there. Okay. Now, you made a second edition in 2017,
right?
And I believe there is a fair chance that you might prepare a third edition of What the Plant Knows. Which ability missing in your current edition you think will be elaborated as a newly recognized plant capability in this potential new edition of your book? Just similar analogous story to hearing.
I think if I talk about what's really the holy grail of plant biology now, we've now known that, say, for over the course of the past 100 years, we've moved from Darwin, who was one of the first people to study how plants respond to light, to really understanding light perception and signaling in plants even at an atomic level. And then we moved into plants responding to smells and to touches and to hearing and to tasting in the roots, and even into how plants could encode information in memory. But what we still are just getting a grasp on is how does it integrate all this information? If you look at a plant, and this is one of the things that's so amazing about it, you take a look at a tree or at any plant in your garden. At the same time, it's getting sunlight, it's getting signals from parasites that are attacking it. It knows where the water is in the ground. It's being attacked by the wind. And it's integrating all of these signals to yield a plant exquisitely adapted for that environment at a particular time. What's the biggest difference between a person, between an animal and a plant? And in my mind, it's not photosynthesis. It's that a plant is literally rooted in the ground. It can't move. You and I can move. If you are in an environment that is really dangerous for you, you can run away. But that plant can't. So because the plant can't run away, running away is actually a simple response. You don't need to be too smart to run away. But a plant can't run away. It has to adapt to lots of light or to little light, to 40-degree changes in temperatures, to drought or to too much wind, to attack by viruses and bacteria, and all the time changing its physiology in order to survive. that's an incredibly smart, I'll use here, organism. So how does it integrate all those signals in the absence of a brain? There is no brain in the plant. And this is still things we don't understand completely.
Fully agree, and we are really converging very nicely because I was going to ask you about the associative learning, because what you are describing, part of that adaptation and integration, fitting into the environment, is something which might be called associative learning. And this feature in plants became a focus of very vivid and really serious controversy. One would say almost aggressive controversy in our plant biology community. This is related to the experiments published in 2016, as you well know, by the lab of Monica Galliano, and you are referring to her previous work on sound sensitivity. Now in this new report, they are indicating that pea plants could be trained to associate airflow, which is a kind of neutral stimulus, with the source of blue light, which is unconditioned stimulus, so that airflow becomes a conditioned stimulus by training, so that these trained plants grow in the direction of airflow in the absence of blue light. There is a recent report claiming that this is experiment unreproducible. You can't repeat it in the same famous eLife journal. But authors published in the same journal reply to the criticism, and they are showing that their experiment was not repeated carefully, especially in relation to light conditions. Isn't it possible that we are here in a bit similar situation of ambiguity as few years ago with plant hearing? What is your bet? Are plants capable of associative learning or not?
I got to take this into two different directions. First of all, regarding to this one set of experiments, until this is replicated in many other labs, I'm still incredibly skeptical. We can look back at the work on plant smelling, the plant responses to signaling of leaf damage. That was done by, oh my God, help me with the name, in 1980. Ian Baldwin.
Yeah.
Ian Baldwin, as a graduate student at Cornell, did these experiments that showed that plants can communicate through volatile signals.
Yeah, just
when that work was published, the plant community also greeted that with a lot of skepticism. But the work was so good that it was quickly replicated in many labs around the world. And it's of interest to note that Ian Baldwin, the same person who did the skeptical research, is now the director of the Max Planck Institute.
Yes.
So, you know, as we say, science is self-correcting.
Yes.
But in this case with Gagliano's experiments, so far no one has repeated it. No one has shown it and even also with our results and with plant hearing, it's one paper on one type of plant where we really hope other people will be able to replicate it.
Mm-hmm.
That's from one side. And we need to be really skeptical of papers that with really wild claims. Okay, that's number one. Then number two is my wife did her PhD in educational psychology. Okay, so I am never, ever going to use the words learning or intelligence or wisdom in a plant setting, since it's such a, those words themselves are so difficult to define sometimes. I unfortunately found myself in the middle of a massive plant fight among two groups of plant biologists with me in the middle. Never thought of it, even being attacked by one group. Because I said that, you know, I said that we don't need to talk about what is plant intelligence. It doesn't help us understand anything.
Yes, we will come to that, yeah.
You know, so I don't, do plants adapt? No doubt about it. Can you call that learning? Well, there's some people who might call it learning and there's some who won't call it learning. We just need to be able to define what it is that we're describing.
Yes. Nevertheless, I am very curious myself. I fully share your skepticism, and because I am following really this contention and fight in our field, I am very grateful for your book, because I believe that your book is really giving correct settings, really critical yet very open-minded settings to see forward, how to move forward in this field. Is there anything what the plants know or plant knows and we do not know?
First, I got to talk about what the word knows is. I got a funny story about the book. The original title of the book was not What a Plant Knows. The manuscript I had sent was called The Aware Plant.
Yeah.
And, and my editor at Scientific American said, no, we're going to call it What a Plant Knows. And I said, no, because plants don't know anything. And she said, I don't care. No one's going to buy The Aware Plant. Everyone will buy What a Plant Knows. And it's okay if in the first page you say plants don't really know much.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, plants have abilities that we don't.
Yeah.
We can respond. If we take sight, for example, what is sight? Sight is receiving an electromagnetic wave and translating that into a response. Okay, and we can respond. We humans respond to a very narrow spectrum of light, what we call visible light, which goes, it's the colors of the rainbow, everything from blue all the way up to red. But a plant can differentiate between blue and red, no problem. But a plant also responds to ultraviolet light, and a plant also responds to far red light. These are wavelengths that we are blind to. We don't even know they exist. And this makes sense because light is probably the most important signal for a plant survival. So it has to be very, very attuned to the environment to know where it is and at what time of the day.
Exactly. So I'm really appreciating that for public you have now pointed out some abilities of plants which are really surpassing our
I mean, from abilities. A plant's point of view, we're very limited. We only have 4 types of light receptors in our eyes, and plants have upwards of 13.
Yeah. One of forefathers of your family, Maharal of Prague, Rabbi Löw, living here in 16th century. He was a really great scholar, appreciated until today and studied. And among his concepts, there was a concept of unity of life. And this deep intuition, certainly in his time, mostly theologically inspired, this deep intuition of unity of life is fully corroborated in our times. We know that all life on the earth has common origin. All eukaryotic cells are related. We have common ancestor. As Kipling nicely summarizes, we be of one blood, ye and I. And we can say this today also to plants. Now, considering sensual cognitive similarities or parallels between animals and plants, how much of that is based on this common homologous cellular machinery of the last eukaryotic common ancestor? And how much of that, on the contrary, is based on the convergent analogous evolution of emergent features of independently evolving complex multicellular organisms? I am sorry for such a big, complicated question, but you understand why I'm aiming.
Well, Victor, first of all, thanks for mentioning the Rabbi Loeb, the Maharal of Prague. My wife is 10 generations removed from him, and of course, my kids 11 generations removed from him. And it's really important, first as scientists, this idea of unity. You mentioned my research as a postdoctoral fellow. That's what's over my right shoulder here on the wall. I turned it into artwork. Because if we have to remember that, as you mentioned, that we all evolved from that one single organism in the oceans 2 billion years ago, 3 billion years ago. And because of that, we all share a common ancestor and a common fate. And so that anything that was necessary for life in that one cell will be shared between plants and animals, and also fungi. And this idea that plant biology is removed from animal biology is a fallacy. And that's why from studying plants, we can learn many things that are important for our own biology. And I think the clearest example is Gregor Mendel. You know, Gregor Mendel, the father of modern genetics, studied pea plants. And why what he studied in pea plants is relevant? Because genes are genes. The universal rules of genetics apply to plants and animals. What I discovered, what I thought was a plant-specific complex, I then found out that it was common to all of biology.
Yes.
The reason it's now druggable against cancer, not because plants get cancer, it's because when human biology, when cellular biology goes awry in a human, it leads to cancer. When it goes awry in plants, it leads to something else. But the basic mechanisms are the same. And understanding that unity, I think is beautiful. I think it, I've given talks when people really get mad when I use these words of memory in plants and sight in plants and smell, because people say, well, if plants do all these things, what does that mean? You mean I'm no longer unique as a human? No, it doesn't mean we're not unique as humans. It just means that the world is there is a unity, and you can take it from a religious or a philosophical or a biological point of view, and maybe it's the same. Rabbi Loeb didn't know anything about genetics, but we all share genes from that same organism. We share genes, but that's also why we can use plants for drugs, for finding medicines. Plant chemicals affect humans, not because the plants are being nice to us, but because the plants need these chemicals for their own biology, and the targets are very similar. There's only one thing that we do that the plants don't do. We talk about them. They don't talk about us.
Exactly. Nevertheless, you answered, I would say, half of my question, because I am sure you would agree that along with these deeply shared unifying principles of cell biology and cell regulation, there must be, I am convinced there are really emergent convergent features. Because multicellularity of plants is independently evolved from animals, and a lot of these features and abilities, senses, has to do with independently evolved convergent multicellularity.
Exactly. Thanks for putting it in that way, and we could come back to the idea of a brain. If we're convinced that you need a brain in order to make complex decisions or in order to integrate signals. But obviously plants do it without a brain. And the conclusion must be that the brain is one evolutionary solution for integration that multicellular animals developed. But multicellular plants developed another mechanism which we don't understand as much. But the plants, for humans, don't make petals, just like plants don't make fingers. Different genes regulate both processes. But interestingly, the basic mechanisms how those genes work is convergently the same.
Yes, yes. You already mentioned that you are systematically, I would say, deconstructing the question of plant intelligence or on-plant intelligence as an unproductive one, and instead you are showing that it is more productive to conclude that plants are aware. This is a major topic of the epilogue of your book. Now, a related phenomenon is a loss of awareness during anesthesia treatment. And as you well know, plants react to anesthetics as we do. In the presence of ether in the atmosphere, Venus flytrap, Dionea muscipula, stops to catch the flies and only wakes up as soon as the ether is gone. Anesthesia in plants is known since 19th century, and interestingly, plants themselves produce molecules with anesthetic effects, especially ethylene, but also some derivatives of ether. Do you think there might be some function for an anesthetic action of the ethylene during the plant senescence? Because ethylene is really much produced after the pollination and maturation.
That's interesting. Actually, I in our pre-talk, I said there's never been a question that I've not been asked before. That is the first time I've been asked this question. That's a great question. First of all, it's very important for our listeners to understand, when we talk about anesthetics in plants, we are not talking about absence of pain. When we use these human terms, it's very important to mean what we say. What does an anesthetic do for us? An anesthetic stops the electric signals in our nerves, and therefore we don't feel pain. When you give a Venus flytrap an anesthetic, also its electric signals in its leaves are inhibited, and therefore it can't close. But it doesn't mean that it's losing consciousness. But that the idea that ethylene, which is an aging hormone, would then be causing the plant to die. And doing that is similar to anesthesia. That's actually an interesting idea. I have to work with this one a little bit more. But the reason these anesthetics work in plants is because the same ion channels that are inhibited in animals are also present in plants. These are things that go back to that first cell. So anything that's going to inhibit this electricity propagating will also inhibit in plants.
Yes, and as you well know, this is an ancient field which is now revived more by František Baluška, one of the protagonists of the fierce concept of neurobiology. But I think that it is really interesting that I would say that response to anesthesia is really proof and demonstration that it makes sense to speak about awareness in plants. Definitely, I believe this is the case. I hope we have still a little bit of time to look to more, let's say, general contexts. And again, here is a very big danger of people exaggerating cognitive abilities of plants and integrating them into the ecological circumstances. How important it might be to really consider and calculate with the plant cognitive and memory abilities in our attempts to understand and maybe predict what will happen in ecosystems during the current climate change. So if there are what might be ecological implications of cognitive abilities of plants?
Well, I really don't want to use the word cognitive. And the reason, and let me just say one other reason, is because it's that when we say cognitive abilities, it becomes so subjective that we could actually make an IQ scale of plants where Arabidopsis would be stupid, and the Venus flytrap would be very smart, and then we could actually have anti-plantism, and you get racism against plants, and but understanding it behooves us to understand how plants sense their environment and respond, in order that we can manipulate this in agriculture. And I know this is a little controversial for some people, but we have to admit that there is nothing natural about agriculture. Nothing that we grow in agriculture is a natural plant. But without that, we can't live. If we look at natural ecosystems, through global climate change, they will adapt and survive and turn into new ecosystems. It's happened over millennia. This is always, the forest might become a desert, and the desert can become a forest. But if we're talking about agriculture, which we are dependent upon, everything that we do, 24 hours a day is dependent on plants. From the oxygen that we're breathing right now, to the cotton that we're wearing, to the coffee that I'm drinking, to the food that we eat, and to the fuel that we burn in our cars, it's all plant-based. And if our current crops cannot grow as temperatures rise, and we know, for example, wheat, a change in 2 degrees can make wheat infertile. If it's exactly at the time when it needs to be pollinated. It behooves us to understand how plants perceive the environment, how they respond to it, how they adapt to it, so that we can manipulate this in order for our own survival.
Yeah, thank you very much, because this is really very important conclusion, showing how crucial it is to use our wisdom about plants for also genetic manipulations. And I would say the story of golden rice is a tremendous example of mismanagement of very promising food for humanity based on the uninformed refusal of gene manipulation. I am afraid we have to slowly conclude. I don't know if you like to say something, because I like to finish with quotation from your book.
I just want to thank you, Victor, and for the embassy and for the ambassador for reaching out for me for doing this. As president, it's a great opportunity to take an hour off and to discuss science, not have to deal with university politics.
Thank you very much. And I will finish with a quotation from What the Plant Knows at the end of the whole book. A shared genetic past does not negate eons of separate evolution, while plants and humans maintain parallel abilities to sense and be aware of the physical world. The independent paths of evolution have led to a uniquely human capacity beyond intelligence that plants do not have, the ability to care. So the next time you find yourself on a stroll through a park, take a second to ask yourself, what does the dandelion in the lawn see? What does the grass smell? Touch the leaf of an oak, knowing that the tree will remember it was touched, but it won't remember you. You, on the other hand, can remember this particular tree and carry the memory of it with you forever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Israeli Embassy, Academia Publishing House, Faculty of Science of the Charles University for making this meeting possible. And certainly big thanks to Daniel Chamovitz.
And thank you, Victor. I look forward to visiting once this period is over.
I am looking to. All the very best from Prague.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you very much also from the embassy. Thank you very much from the ambassador of Israel himself. He asked me to tell you that he's very much looking forward to you come to Prague, hopefully soon. So greetings from him, and thank you both of you for this great interview. It was very interesting for me, especially, and I don't know anything about that. So now it was great. So I hope that everybody enjoyed it. Thank you so much and good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.